So, good evening, everyone. Let's call to order the meeting for the Raleigh Planning Board for tonight, Wednesday, April 10th. Tonight we have there's a special permit review on the agenda. To start with, we have a zoning, a request for a rezone of property on Weathersfield Street. We're also dealing with a couple of continued public hearings and some other business. So the first item we're going to call is a special permit site plan review application for an accessory building with more than 1,500 square feet of floor space in the area, submitted by Bradley and Mary Ellen Jameson, property owners for the property located at 54 Warehouse Lane, map 27, lot 114.
Yes. And we were also talking about the definitive subdivision for 623. They're here right now, but I told them it's going to be continued. Can we actually take a motion to continue it, to at least indicate?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. And so, well, we are going to get to this matter for 54 Warehouse in 1 second. I do want to just deal with some housekeeping business. We have a item that was on the agenda for 8:10 this evening. It was a continued hearing on a definitive subdivision plan for a 4-lot conventional subdivision at 623 Weathersfield Street in the outlying zoning district. The applicant has requested a continuance. The reason for the continuance has to do with the availability of an as-built plan for the site. So I think on the basis of that, I'd like to take a vote to see if we can continue the matter to the next public, the next meeting in May.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
So unanimous.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks,
Good. So again, we're back to. So in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, pursuant to the Raleigh Protective Zoning Bylaw and the Raleigh Planning Board Rules and Regulations, the Raleigh Planning Board will conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, April 10th at 7:30, pertaining to a special permit and site plan review to be held in the large meeting room at the Raleigh Public Library located at 141 Main Street. The special permit site plan review application is being submitted by Bradley and Mary Ellen Jameson, property owners for their property located at 54 Warehouse Lane, map 27, lot 141, pursuant to the zoning bylaw section 4.8.1H, accessory buildings with more than 1,500 square feet of floor area, section 7.6, site plan review, and section 7.8, special permits. The accessory structure is currently being constructed to have an interior area with less than 1,500 square feet, but the owner is now proposing to enclose the open porch that will cause the interior floor area to exceed 1,500 square feet. The subject property is located in the outlying zoning district. The text of the proposed amendment, actually I think that's incorrect. Yeah. The text of the application is available in the Raleigh Planning Board, located at the Planning Board offices at 39 Central Street, Raleigh, during regular business hours. Any person interested who wishes to be heard on the petition should appear at the public hearing at the time and place so designated. So, for the applicant, Mr. Jameson, how you doing?
Great, how are you tonight?
Good, good. You want to just stand up, tell us who you are, what you're looking to do here today?
My name is Brad Jameson. I live at 54 Warehouse Lane, formerly of 100 Havel Street for 35 years. We recently moved down to Warehouse Lane for 2 reasons. One was to get off of Havel Street, and one was that I wanted to shop for my own personal use and park my electrical van. And I like hobbies, and I have a building that we built, and it has an architectural sidewalk feature that was always intended to be part of the workshop space. It's already constructed. We just want to plywood the front of the first floor section and put the windows in and finish the job.
So the porch you're enclosing, that's part of it was an existing structure?
Nope, it's all new construction.
All new construction.
Yeah, there is a background. This was the house, what's now the residential dwelling, was a former machine shop. And he came in and renovated that, so now it's a residential dwelling.
Right.
The rear structure, he got a building permit to construct an accessory building. At the time when he first started constructing, it was less than the 1,500 square feet. But the part that I have highlighted up here on the screen in yellow, that's the part that he's looking to enclose. And That, by doing that, it puts it over the 1,500 square feet, which
Right.
crosses the threshold for required.
Site plan review.
And I do have pictures of the site, which actually I sent out, or they should be in your packet.
So when you submitted the application for a building permit, did it include the porch that you're now going to
Yes.
close?
Yes,
Okay. Because one of the reasons we do the site plan review is to consider drainage and runoff, and it seems like the size of the roof is remaining the same, but it's because you're putting more interior space underneath that you're going to have to, that triggers this review, right?
Yeah, everything that was done there, while you know that structure was less than 1,500 square feet, could be done under a building permit, and we wouldn't have a chance. But because it now is under a special permit, the board does have an option to look at some of these if it feels like it's justified. Now, I will say that it seemed like a simple application when it first came in, and it still is. But at the same time, this property has a history. When I put out public notice, I immediately got some calls regarding and found out a little more about the history, which Mr. Jameson, he wasn't around, or he wasn't property owner during that time. But I will point out that the neighbor, this is at 54, I believe it's the neighbor at 52, had reported that they had been getting some additional drainage issues on their property. And this area that you see right here, just to the back there, that's where the structure is, but that gravel area actually had, vegetation, trees on it, which were removed. So there may be some justification for the board, under the special permit requirements to look whether or not drainage, something should be done in order to mitigate any potential drainage impact. And we could actually,
So when you put the building in, did you have to disturb what was already the existing foliage that was on the ground? Did you clear and add a gravel parking lot?
no, we did not. We just, staked out the spot where the building was going to go, and it was all constructed at the same time. But the size, the 1,500 feet, I don't know what you call that, just wasn't sufficient. So we designed it in such a way that, we could have the body of the building meet the requirement, and then the exterior first floor section was more of an architectural feature, so the building didn't look tall and looked like it belonged in a residential spot and not a metal building, which I have nothing against. I just don't want one behind my house. So it was very straightforward. The soil conditions there, no matter if you're on the left, right, front, or back, anywhere on the property is one soil type. It's sand, everywhere, 100%. You can't find a rock anywhere on that site. So the drainage in that environment is immediate. So I don't know what anybody would be talking about with overflow of drainage, but I've never seen anything of the sort.
There's a gravel parking lot now, it's not sand, and all that
Right,
dense
but
grade you've placed around the building is now gravel instead of sand, so.
We don't
that's
have any
good.
standing water issues whatsoever.
I think,
Yeah.
Brad, that
Yeah.
stairway gets enclosed also, doesn't it?
Well, that's the plan, is that
You got an exterior stair on this plan here, now it
yes,
it becomes part of the
there's
structure.
no additional structure to be built. Those columns that you see in that photograph are just structural to hold up that section of roof, and we want to plywood that and put the windows in. That's it. Finish the interior of the space.
So, the issue is, because it's over 1,500 square feet, it falls under the jurisdiction of the board. We do have concerns about runoff and how that water is handled on your property as it affects your butters. There's been some concern that, or at least somebody had raised an issue. And for that reason, we are probably going to want to look at the stormwater handling on the property.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I mean, I think we should also schedule a site visit by the board so we can take a quick look at it.
That'd be
just to
great.
see, what, you know, where in fact, how this could impact those neighbors that are raising the concerns, okay? So we can just go ahead and schedule that. I think that's where we should start. As far as, you know, last time we did one of these, we did have an engineer's site plan submittal. Will you require the same of this applicant?
What we have right now is a plot plan, so which I can, actually, that was what I was using. And I'd probably see where Mary needs to do a proper zoning review. There may have to be some details added to the plot plan. But that was what is originally submitted. And a lot of times if it's, especially since this initially was only going to be an enclosure of a small porch, you know, a lot of times we haven't actually had to consider this level of detail on these
Well, that's
things.
it, yeah.
Unless it's a totally new construction. But in a way, I think that's what it's kind of suggesting is that, in a way, we're looking at it because the area had to be cleared of the trees, which would actually mitigate the runoff.
I just don't see how we can, you know, I'm not trying to create artificial barriers here for you, but at the same time, I don't see how our engineer can do anything in terms of stormwater review with the plan that we have.
That's a huge expense. I mean, we went to the trouble, we took all of the downspouts on the house, we had the whole thing done so that we collect rainwater. That entire roof structure of that house, we capture all of that water.
In underground, like cisterns?
Yes. We've gone to a lot of trouble. We didn't affect the grade in any way.
Well, so,
on
I mean,
the
the thing
edges of
is-
the property. It's,
Let's take, why don't we
I mean,
take a site
historically, there was no issue whatsoever there.
Okay, so listen, I mean, again, I'm not trying to throw up artificial barriers here to you getting this done, okay? I think that, you know, that if it does seem like the site presents these issues where you're potentially causing stormwater to run off and affect other abutters, we may have to go further down that
That'd be
road.
great.
But here's what we think, no, I think that'd be expensive, like you're
No, I'm
suggesting.
saying if you
Yeah.
took a visit and you
Yeah.
saw the site the way it exists,
Right.
you would see otherwise, is
I mean,
what I'm saying. You
good.
would see that it's a flat
So we
lot,
can-
it's all sand, and it drains immediately.
If we can take a look at it first and then decide whether, you know, based on what we're able to observe,
That works.
it makes sense that
Fabulous.
we go further, we will. And, you know, and again, it's not because we're trying to trip you up here, but had you come in and initially said you were going to do a 2,500 square foot building, then we would have been doing this process. In this case, you went through it with a 1,500 square foot building that you subsequently amended, and I can see
Well, I
why you
didn't-
could have evolved. I see how the project evolved, and it, you know, I don't think it was necessarily your intention to jump on it.
I know, but the point I want to make is the project didn't evolve. I pulled the permit for the building exactly the way you see it.
Yep.
And the advice I was given was that, you know, we have winters that don't end around here. We wanted to start building last fall, not all through the summer this year. So Mr. Ward gave me really good advice. I've had history with him. I've been a building inspector. I've been in town for 35 years. He said, Brad, you can build this section because it meets this criteria. And you can build the whole building. Leave this section completely open as an open sidewalk and go visit the planning board and get the nod so that you can close it in and complete the process. I could have designed the building as just a square box, but we went to a lot of trouble, if you look at the drawings, to make the building architecturally pleasing. And to the point that we even invited the neighbor that we think has a concern about the water runoff into the house to show him what we're doing on a couple of occasions, and showed him the drawing of that building, all 5 pages of it. So no objection whatsoever. And so it does come a little bit as a surprise to me that somebody's saying something about water runoff. I've been there, remodeled that entire abandoned building myself in a year and a half. I have never seen a drop of water leave that property and go anywhere else. So if the board would like to see the site, I think that's a great idea. I believe in that. The proof's in the pudding. You go over there and you'll see for yourself that it's a beautiful flat lot that drains immediately.
Did you want
Good.
to spend time to go there?
Yeah, and while we're figuring out what we can do, is there anybody here that's affected by this, would like to add any comment? Sir? Just tell us who you are and where you live.
Joe's House, 60 Warehouse Lane. I would just like to say that my wife and I are in favor of what Mrs. Jameson wants to do. We're butters in 3 or 4 different lots here, properties. So we're in favor.
Good, that's good to know that people were supportive of it. All right, so let's set up a time, and at this point, you want to try to do it before the April meeting, or before
April 23rd, next week sometime, between the 15th, the week of the 15th. And I guess,
can we, Larry, would you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to be there.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's going to go beyond,
Well, right, I mean, we're trying to make an initial determination, so I don't know if you can do that, but, okay. So, what day, how about like a Thursday afternoon?
I'm sorry?
What, Thursday afternoon?
Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, what day would
Maybe
that
the
be?
18th.
How does April 18th at 4:30 sound?
That's perfect.
All right. So then we'll schedule a site visit for April 18th at 4:30 at your property with members of the board present.
Make a motion to continue.
Second.
And to the meeting on the 23rd?
Yep.
Okay, so the motion to continue this hearing to April 23rd meeting at 7:30 in the evening?
But the site visit will be on the 18th.
Correct.
Fabulous, all right.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you. All right. So the next item. Chris, do we have any? All right, so the next item is a request to rezone property 293 Weathersfield Street. So pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, the Raleigh Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 10th at 7:40 to consider amending the zoning district map of the town of Raleigh, the map. The meeting is to be held in a large meeting room in the Raleigh Public Library located at 141 Main Street, Raleigh. The rezoning request is pursuant to a citizen's petition submitted by Edward Charette, the subject property owner, to request that the planning board sponsor a town meeting warrant article to be presented at the 2019 spring special town meeting that would have the town vote to amend the zoning district map to rezone his property located at 293 Weathersfield Street, map 23, lot 47, from the outlying zoning district to the business light industrial zoning district. The text of the proposed amendment, the Raleigh Protected Zoning Bylaw, the maps associated with the proposed application to the Raleigh zoning district, amendment to the application to the zoning district map, and the supplemental documents may be inspected at the planning board office located at 39 Central Street, Raleigh, during regular business hours. Any person interested in wishing to be heard on the zoning proposal should appear at the public hearing at the time and place so designated. So the first thing I want to do is open the public hearing on this matter.
Make the motion, we open the public hearing.
So David's first and John second. All in favor?
Aye.
So meeting's open. So for the applicant, can I ask
Yes.
Go ahead.
Chairman, Matt Caffrey, representing Ed Surratt. Should I want to stand with my back to the
you
audience.
know what, maybe you can just grab, head towards the corner, maybe?
All right,
Does that work?
yeah.
Does that work? So I understand where you're...
Speak with
Sure.
my back. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Matt Caffrey. I'm an attorney. I represent Ed Surratt, the owner of 293 Weathersfield Street. We have, as you pointed out, we have submitted a proposed warrant article to rezone the corner of Weathersfield and Route 1 from outline to business light industry. In connection with that, we've obtained the signatures of 136 people who are residents of Raleigh who support this. Those have been certified by the town clerk. And the reason fundamentally that we're proposing this is the board, as you know, the planning board has already reviewed and I believe is going to recommend the rezoning of parcels immediately north of that parcel to go from outlying to business light industry, presumably because the board recognizes the commercial nature of Route 1 and recognizes that that is more appropriately a commercial / business light industry designation for those parcels. Mr. Chairman, we submit that this parcel is no different in substance or in character than those other parcels. It sits, of course, on Route 1, frontage on Route 1. It is, by its nature, in a commercial area. I think everyone in the room has been up and down that area, probably very familiar with it, probably more familiar than I. And it is a heavily traveled area. It is more appropriately designated for a business-like industry use. I have reviewed, just now I've received a handout from some of the folks who are here and may be opposed to this. And I understand that there are some concerns, perhaps there are some concerns with regard to traffic, with regard to that area. And I would submit to the board that although we understand those concerns, anything that happens on that parcel once it's rezoned to business-like industry, to the extent there's going to be use of that parcel, to the extent there's going to be a business at that parcel, would probably entail a traffic study. And would probably be required to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the board that all of the issues relating to that parcel, whether it's egress, ingress, whatever it might be, are addressed. So tonight, I believe the issue is narrow. It is the question of whether or not you should be excluding that parcel. For what reason, I don't know, but excluding that parcel from what otherwise was the board's determination that the parcels immediately north of it are of such a nature and of such a character that they should be designated business-like industry. I would submit that that's exactly the same situation here. We do recognize it's on Weathersfield Street, it's on the corner of Weathersfield and Route 1, but again, it's obvious that the frontage and the character of this parcel is commercial in nature and should be recognized by the board. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have with regard to our reasons for this, but thank you for hearing us.
Thank you. So I do want to comment on the fact that the Raleigh has been considering making some amendments to the zoning on Route 1 for several months now. We had held some meetings in the library, first an informational meeting, and then we took it up as a town initiative to amend the zoning. By the time we got around to doing it in January, the parcels we were considering did not include this parcel. Frankly, I'm not quite sure how it evolved from, in the fall or prior considerations where it was considered in. This most recent version, this parcel was not written into the amendment, and it seemed like we got, aside from having some people that had some concerns, we did work through those concerns. And I think we came out of that with a vote from this board, and the recommendation of this board is to support the amendment of those parcels to the north of Weathersfield Street, to the north of Mr. Charrette's property. And the reasons we went along those lines is, number one, we are trying to raise some, the commercial tax base in this town, and the way we're hoping to do that is by encouraging growth and development along those corridors that justify and support that type of a use. And I think that there was a recognition, given the development in along Route 1, Boston all the way up to the border, it's pretty commonly and usually associated with commercial and light industrial uses. I think the portion in Raleigh really, aside from the density, is really no difference. I think that there's that seems to be the nature and character of Route 1, that whole length. Now, this petition came in by the owner himself, so it's not something the town has on its own decided to pursue. So for that reason, we've made this time available, and they're making their pitch, and I think it's something that the town, for all the reasons that we support it north of this parcel, it's something we ought to consider for this parcel as well, because it has all the same attributes. So with that said,
I want to add,
please.
The reason this parcel was removed from this was partly on my impetus. I think this parcel belongs with Weathersfield Street rather than Route 1. There's an early 1800s house on it and barn, and that intersection is a tricky intersection. Yes, that if the house is demolished, it will have demolition delay, et cetera. And I felt this parcel really belonged with the residential nature of going on Weathersfield Street. So that's why it got dropped at an early stage. And I still feel that way. I don't feel it belongs in the industrial zone.
Okay, so I know we have quite a few people that are here and have expressed some opposition to this, so I think if you don't mind, I'm going to let Mr. Cullen just raise his points, because he's brought it to our attention. Please, yeah.
I'm Bernie Cullen, and I'm at 283 Weathersfield Street, and I'm actually a butter to this property. I'm the piece of land that wraps around Melinda and Jim Patrick's house that's right next to it on Weathersfield Street.
So you're 23-49?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I think you just recaptured most of the initial story around how this came about. We learned in November that this was under consideration and immediately objected. And we had objected in 2003, in 2004, and 2005 for exactly the same reason. That this is a busy, dangerous intersection, and anything that goes in there should first and foremost consider the implications for the intersection. So we thought we were, in a certain sense, the problem had been solved when the planning board withdrew this plot, this particular plot, the site, from the zoning change. And that made good sense to us, because it isn't the same as the adjacent lots further north on Route 1. It definitely isn't the same. It's not vacant, because the house is there. The plots that are north of this have been commercial. This has never been commercial. And unlike the other plots north of this, almost defying logic, it's different because it's on the intersection. And if you actually take a look at the plot plan, or the plan of changes for this zone, all four corners, it's the northerly corners on Weathersfield Street, both on the east and the west side, and the southerly corners on Central Street on the east and west side, were excluded from any zoning changes. So it appeared to me that the planning board was thinking smartly and was not congesting those dangerous intersections. And it made very good sense at that point. So now, when it comes to the other changes on Route 1, once this lot, this site was pulled, then I was fully in favor of the other changes, because I think those other small businesses on Route 1 deserve a little more degrees of freedom to upgrade their properties, because they're not particularly attractive. As opposed to, for example, the great job that the Palm Island Winery did on their building, which is really attractive. But again, let's note that their plot, and they've got a large plot there, was not zoned, was not changed either. And it makes good sense because it's right on that intersection. Okay, so in the handout I've shown basically what the original proposal was, which included a kind of a buffer zone on Weathersfield Street, but that really wasn't as much of the issue, although that was welcomed. The real issue is where those egresses were going to be on Route 1. And essentially any egress there is going to make that intersection more complicated. When the folks at Plum Island Winery moved to get their zoning, their changes agreed to, they very hospitably moved their entrance to their parking lot to the furthest it could possibly be. Now, because they were grandfathered, there wasn't anything else that we could do at that point. So we basically accepted what the fait accompli, that they're there, and they think, and the law is on their side. The zoning law is on their side. So, and they've done a great job. But it is tricky, and those people who come out of Weathersfield Street, if there's somebody trying to make a left into Plum Island Winery, you have to be additionally careful because it cuts down on the sight lines as you're looking north and there's traffic moving south. Okay, so the basis of our opposition is it's Weathersfield Street in this area and all along Weathersfield Street is clearly a residential neighborhood, including this property. Now, Mr. Surratt is an experienced developer, and he gambled. He bought the property knowing that it was zone outlying district. So he gambled, and hopefully he won't win. There's no history of business or commercial activity on the property, unlike the other properties. And Mr. Surratt knows full well his neighbors, because we've got a history, are very opposed to commercial activities on the site. And as I show in the next table, I actually did a physical count from the mass crash data database on accidents at Weathersfield Street or in immediate proximity. And whilst the number of fatalities is relatively small, thank God, it actually is, I think, the most dangerous intersection in terms of fatalities in Rowley.
What is Wood Street Route 1? More fatal
In terms of fatalities. Not accidents. No. Route 1, 133 and Central Street beats the hell out of it. But this is a dangerous intersection. There's no, and anybody I come out of it every day, 2 or 3 times.
Now, have it gotten more dangerous since the winery driveway, what do you think?
It would be hard for me to say. I do know that it's much safer to pull out of that intersection at night than during the day because you get better views of what's actually coming, and that's a very odd thing to say.
So, I mean, as much as the safety concerns are something we need to be paying attention to, it is also something that the Department of Transportation would be mandating be considered for this site, because the curb cut would have to come on Route 1, it'd have to go through the Department of Transportation for all that review, which would likely include a traffic study, and including all those sightline reviews and those type of things. So I'm not downplaying those concerns, I'm just stating that the zoning change wouldn't change how the Department of Transportation would view this amendment, or view any application to develop that parcel.
Well, here's the complication. Mr. Surratt already arranged to have a curb cut back in 2003. And that curb cut was cut around 2004 and 2005, not quite clear. And the curb cut was because Mr. Surratt said he needed it for his horse trails, because he was going to have a corral on that property.
No, I never said that. That's
I've got.
That's not true.
I have to put.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I sent the documents of the permit to Kirk, and it documents in the permit that it was the request was placed for a corral. Is that correct?
Yes, it does say.
So, anyway, so the issue is, I don't know what takes precedence, the existing curb cut that the state has already agreed to, although it never actually received any final paperwork. And again, that's from the permit, the communication from the permit person at the DOT. So I have no idea what takes precedence here. I do know that there's a curb cut, and you can go out and you can look on the ground, and it's there.
I do believe whenever they do a business change, person's address, and they apply for a curb cut every time they do.
Well, but we have another issue, and that is the accuracy of representations.
So we have to go forward, I guess. Have to acknowledge them that give it.
Hasn't the town a couple of times asked for traffic like that and been refused?
Yes, oh yes.
I believe the town has it looked at. I don't think.
Yeah, it's because it's a state road.
Right.
And they disagree with it.
They determined that it wasn't
necessary
to maintain the safety of the intersection. Okay. So there are some safety concerns. Again, I feel as though the Department of Transportation is in a better position than this board and the zoning review to make the determinations for that specific issue. So I think there are other issues that you want to raise that, I think we are here to listen to. I think, and these numbers are compelling. In fact, the 2 people who died just in the immediate, recognizable history of people in the town, we all remember when these things happened. So it's a concern, but I'm not sure that reason alone, given that the Department of Transportation is going to be responsible to consider the safety of the road, is something would be a reason why we absolutely deny this.
Well, the issue isn't, I don't believe it's in your purview to deny or accept it. It's your purview to
make a recommendation. I
at
understand. Right.
the
Correct.
town meeting. Okay, so the other issue is that, we've got all the abutters on Weathersfield Street have signed a letter basically not explicitly saying they do not want this to occur. And that is unanimous. And there's obvious reasons why that would be the case. One is that we live in a residential area. We bought in a residential area with the intentions of being in a residential area, and now that's being changed under us. For no obvious reason, except for the benefit of Mr. Surratt. Because if you've looked at the tax base between Weathersfield Street and Route 1 and what taxes are currently being generated, they're de minimis. There just isn't any on those commercial properties. They are very, very small.
Except there's no, I have kids in school, okay, but except the business doesn't have kids using school systems. So every business comes to town, my child gets a little more money because when they're taxed on that, if Dunkin' Donuts building pays the tax, that's a profit for this town.
But Mr. Surratt's
Helps my school
business is
system.
already in town.
Yeah, I like business.
All right, so we got over 110 residents basically in a 72-hour period to sign the letter. And essentially we're asking the planning board not to recommend the article at special town meeting because any zoning change exacerbates any existing documented traffic. It undermines the residential nature of the immediate neighborhood. It diminishes the value of the residential properties, and it ensures a long-standing business. Because if this goes, then we're going to have a problem with the other zoning changes. And we don't really want that. We don't want these two things tied together. They deserve to be separate, and this one deserves not.
Actually, they are going to be separate items on the town meeting agenda. They're not. They are. One's a citizen's petition. One is sponsored by the planning board that we voted on as separate items in the warrant.
Right. Okay, that's all I have to say for the time.
Thank you for your time as well. Do you have any comment?
Well, I mean, I would like to speak, but perhaps maybe one of these, I don't want to go in front of one of the butters, but.
Okay, so
someone wants to speak.
anyone else here that'd like to comment on this? Yes.
Sherry David, 292 Weathersfield Street. Reference keeps being made to the properties north of Mr. Surratt's property on Route 1 being commercial, but what about the property to the east and the property across the street? It's all residential, so why are we only referring to the properties north of it? This is a Weathersfield Street lot that happens to extend to Route 1. It's not a Route 1 lot that happens to extend to Weathersfield Street. It's literally in the middle of a neighborhood that actually has a dwelling on it and has, I don't know, 100 years.
Early 1800s.
Well, I mean, I think we are referring to, we're referring to that lot specifically because that's affected by the zoning change specifically. We're not disregarding the surrounding abutters. So, I mean, at least to direct that, to answer that comment, we are considering all the properties that surround this area, including the properties across the street. Sir?
Town 22 Bennett Hill Road. It seems like we're getting the cart in front of the horse. We have this land along Route 1. Yeah, we want the tax money that comes from that. I understand that, but until they put some kind of better traffic lights into that location, I just think that we have to get that in place, and it takes years for that to happen. And if this gets developed and we have to wait for more fatalities before the state gets moving on it, I just don't think $1 worth of tax money is really worth losing another life at that intersection. And I've almost been taken out a number of times in the 10 years I've been there, because you can't see past the telephone poles coming out, and it's just very, very dangerous.
Sure, but I think it's, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here to suggest that any development that might occur on this site would be a direct causation with whatever potentially could happen in that intersection. I mean, I don't think we should, characterize this as some form of, potential harm or threat being brought to town. What we're proposing is commercial development.
I do too. I also, we live next door to the property, right across the street, and we've been through the fatalities there. We've been through the accidents where she had to go and help somebody come out.
If you wouldn't mind, just one at a time, tell us who you are, tell us what you, where you live, and give us your town as a floor.
And I've witnessed 2 motorcycles go down in the 10 years. And when you see that kind of grisly thing happen, and I know it's happening because the light just doesn't do the trick. I mean, you get the blinking light, it just is not adequate for that intersection. And those 2 that went down, they didn't die, but one of them, I believe, lost a limb. And it's just it's a nightmare to see that kind of thing. And I just think if we have a curb cut, it's just going to add one more blind spot for people coming out of one of those intersections. And I was going to sign Bernie's petition the other day on Saturday. Coming out, we were almost taken out again just to go to that petition down at the Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, it's a bad, bad intersection. And if this gets added to the proposal, we take before the town in May, then I'd be against all the development on that section because it's too dangerous until they get a light in there.
Chairman?
Sure.
My name is Greg Hills. I'm on 475 New Bridgeport Turnpike, which is just one lot south of Weathersfield. So my driveway comes literally, you can, just south of that house on the corner.
For the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen has not voted on this matter, so I'm just speaking my own views at this point. I was also a member, one of the members with David on the zoning review committee that was involved in the initial proposal. So I know how this came about. And I would like to echo the concerns raised by Bernie and others about the traffic implications of this. I'd also like to echo David's concern about this would encroach on a residential neighborhood. Over the past 30 or 40 years, the town has tried very hard to promote commercial development along our Route 1 corridor, and we've done a pretty good job of doing that. And we've done it in a way, I think, that has not offended any residential owner in town. We've really stayed away from residences. And I think that has served the town well in terms of expanding our tax base. But this is different, as David says. This zoning change would encroach on a residential neighborhood. It would encroach on Weathersfield Street, which is a scenic drive. It has over 400, and we shouldn't forget this, it has over 455 feet of frontage on Weathersfield Street. So we're not just talking about Route 1. There are 4 residences across the street from that frontage. So we're encroaching on a neighborhood. There's no doubt about that. We've never done that before. This would be a first, in my opinion. When this was discussed before the ZRC, as I recall, there were some people who were opposed to including this lot, some people who were in favor. We came up with a compromise, which is basically to include most of the lot, but to leave a 50-foot strip along Weathersfield Street. that would prevent any new development from accessing Weathersfield Street with a drive of some sort. That was a compromise position. The board rejected the lot altogether. And so now we have a citizen's petition, which doesn't show any buffer zone along Weathersfield Street. And because it's a citizen's petition, the planning board and indeed town meeting has no authority to put that buffer back in. So if this goes forward, it'd be very ironic that it goes forward in a way that's more detrimental to the neighborhood than the initial proposal would have been. So it seems to me the board should vote to recommend against this. Town meeting should vote against this. If at some future date Mrs. Surratt wants to raise this issue, he can. He could do that. Putting in a buffer strip that would at least make it more palatable to the neighborhood, I would think. This is not the way to do zoning changes in town. And again, we've never encroached on a residential development before. I don't think we should start now.
Okay, now, anybody else that has comments on this? I do want to give the applicant the opportunity at least to address something. Oh, ma'am.
I have one comment on the number of accidents there. I don't know what the recent data is on it, but I do know that it depends on how the state holds the statistics for it. If it was entered that the accident occurred at your report, your report Turnpike at Weathersfield, then they're going to get only what's reported to have happened on your report. If you get it Weathersfield at Route 1, then that's going to be entirely different. So these numbers may not be accurate. It depends on how they are entered and how the state holds them.
But they'll be low. It could be high.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, yeah. And I feel like
I think
they
it's
are.
Ms. Pearson.
Joan Peterson, just as a point of information, I believe, and we can check with town council, that however you do, whether you say yes or no to this, Mr. Surratt has to present this at town meeting because it is not from the Board of Selectmen or the Water Department or whatever. It is a citizen's petition, and that has to be presented by him of what he's looking for.
That's correct. That's what we're anticipating. Anyone else have any comments or want to address this? Would you like to counter?
Just a final, you want to say?
Yeah. Okay. So Ed Surratt, I'm the owner of the property in question. You know, I hear a lot of things about a buffer and how it's going to be detrimental to the neighborhood. I have property that I've developed south that's an asset to the town, and I keep it impeccable. And when I first bought this property, it had been abandoned for 10 years. There was a raccoon living in it. I was the one with a mason friend of mine who fixed the house up. And anything I do is first class. There will not be any shoddy work. There will not be, it's going to be an asset to the town, an asset to the neighborhood. No matter what I do, I'm a landscape contractor. So I can do all kinds of buffers and landscaping to soften any kind of business use that's there. So that's all I wanted to say. It's not going to be a detriment.
It almost sounds like you should have included the buffer that Rick was talking about in this whole plan, because then that might have, moved it smoother.
And as much as we can talk about all the things that could potentially make this better, we're stuck with what the applicant submitted, and that does not have that buffer. I think there are pros and cons to this. I think that, knowing the type of work that Mr. Surratt has brought to the town before, I think that's important to recognize. At the same time, this is a zoning change. It's not an owner change. Who owns this property, who develops this property in the future is anyone's guess, so we're not going to rely on, just deference to the current owner. So, I would also point out that Mr. Surratt went out and got 125 signatures on short notice to get this done. that is countered by some signatures from people that Mr. Cullen got. And I did look at that list and looked, not only is there an intensity of people who object on Weathersfield Street, there's also a broad swath of people from all parts of the town that whose names have some credibility to them. Not that everyone has some credibility, but there's some people in here that I recognize that you'd want to hear from, and I think we do hear from some of these voices as well. So it's a tough issue. I think the board's got to consider it, but I think without any more comment, I think.
I'm sorry, I remember my fourth point.
It's funny, I was listening through it. So okay,
on the corner. It was just to raise the question about the other people who have voiced their support for this. I wonder if they actually know where it was, were they presented with a map? Do they understand the property in question? Do they know where 293 is? Obviously, when it goes without stating that the people that live there obviously know it. And I would just raise that as a point of information. I don't know if they are as familiar with the area.
I think I commented on the validity of both people's support and opposition. I don't think it's helpful to necessarily pick at what they knew when they signed, but nonetheless, I do think there's voices on both sides, and I think I think people who make a decision probably know which hopefully start to form a decision because we're getting to that point in time. Is there anyone else? Sir, Mr. Town?
Yes. If we allow this to go through, then will this set a precedent so that other residential neighborhoods in the future may be vulnerable to commercial development as well?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure. I don't see how that sets the precedent different than the scheme by which we amend our bylaw sets that precedent. We have that scheme in place, and people who want to seek a change to the zoning of the property always have that avenue of recourse. This doesn't change that one way or another. But that being said, I don't. It doesn't vary.
It could be a slippery slope.
Yes. But all we can do is recommend or disapprove.
Correct.
But it's up to the town meeting, so you've got to get people out at the town meeting. If no one's at the town meeting, that's what happens.
And at town meeting, if I'm not mistaken, it's a two-thirds vote. So these events often go to ballot, to paper ballot.
It will be a paper ballot.
So people listen to the planning board at town meeting. A lot of people do. So I would urge you to take it very, very seriously. And I know you will, but your recommendation, whether you recommend or not, matters. That's what it seems to me.
And with that said, should we close this meeting?
Close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing. David, motion. John, second. All in favor? Aye. All right, so the board has heard comment from both the petitioner and those in support and opposition. I can only reiterate what all the points that everyone's made and ask the board to consider those factors. And at this point, I'm going to ask the board to we'll take a vote to see who's in support and opposition. So, all in favor of supporting the petitioner's proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw?
Aye.
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 With the 50 foot, if you get a buffer zone, we'll make a big difference. But they just
a yes or no.
So so the motion is to whether the board should support and endorse the amendment to the proposed amendment to the bylaw in support of the petitioner. No. So
no.
Okay. So first, let me make the motion. I'll make it one more time, a little more clearly. The board is motioning that we support the petitioner's recommendation for a zoning bylaw amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. We need a second, I think.
Well, I think you had an associate member who just voted for this, correct?
I think that's correct.
Yeah, that's actually.
It's not a special permit determination, so
Okay.
technically, you know, you could say that you're not allowed to vote.
All right, so,
I second it.
okay, good. So we got the motion on the table. We got a second. We've got, comes down to. What? You know, I was hoping to see some clarity in the board, but right now it's stuck, we're right in the middle. And the way I look at this, the safety concerns, I think, are to be addressed by the Department of Transportation. I think that,
To be honest with you, I would more likely vote for it if it was that buffer. I don't want to see Weathersfield Street, people that, commercial stuff going in the street. Route 1. That wouldn't make sense.
I think that, I think it's a fair determination that to come to the conclusion that we can characterize Weathersfield Street in that area as residential mixed use, but certainly as it goes down Weathersfield, it's a residential neighborhood. The fact that Mr. Surratt, his standing and his, what risk he took when he bought this property, I don't think that has a lot of bearing on it. He bought the property, he was going to take whatever came down the road in terms of what the zoning was. The fact that there's no history of commercial use does have some persuasive value, I think, because it suggests that this is the character of that parcel and has been for a period of time. The opposition of the neighbors, I don't think that's how we can make decisions necessarily solely on the basis of who's directly impacted, because there's plenty of people in this town that would receive a benefit from this amendment who may not be directly impacted as an abutter. So it's been a real hard decision for me, and I'm still struggling with it. No one's going to help me here.
Well, you know what, where I stand.
Yeah, no. We're all
There was a buffer there with no driveways going on Weathersfield Street. There's not on there, he's going to leave.
I also...
I was up there today, and that property looks like it belongs to Weathersfield.
Down that end.
But the back part of it that's on Route 1, if it could be separated out, I would not have a problem with that being some sort of nicely done commercial.
And yet I think if you look, what the frontage on Route 1, this property is no differently situated than the property that's 500 feet from the corner. So I think, right, or the property is directly across the street, which, although it's in the outlying zoning district, managed to get, it has a commercial use.
But it's been, that has been there for years. As a
right, so it's a
cider mill or something like that.
So
the other part of it is that this is not the way to plan.
One person happy, 50 people unhappy.
well, and yet I don't see that kind of comment doesn't help me make that decision, because I don't necessarily think that the 50 people that showed up speak entirely for the interest of the town when it comes to where the direction we want to see the town head in terms of commercial tax base and some of the amenities that developers can bring to town. So.
And just as a point of information, whatever you say, yes or no, it's the citizens' petition. It has to be presented as is, and if we have 100 people or 300 or 400 people, they're the ones that vote on it. Mm-hmm. So, and I've seen the warrant, and we're going to be there, I predict, for 2 nights. And I've never done 2 nights, so I'm not a happy person.
This was already taken out. I thought this was.
Just be fast.
Decided.
Can I be any faster than I am?
No.
Well,
okay.
And for the reasons that we supported the petition to the north of Weathersfield, I support this citizens petition as well, and would recommend that the board support the initiative. So, thank you.
Well, You know what the vote is, though.
I do, it's 3-2. All right?
Actually, if we have total control and not allowing him to have a driveway on a permit, then I would be on the side, but do we have that total control and not allow him to have driveway? Control.
We don't.
We don't.
We don't.
I mean, Mr. Surratt knows what the problems are.
So, I think we've taken the vote. I know that there's a lot of ambiguous feelings about it and some negative feelings about it. I'll point out that I'm also on the ballot this year, so that's quite heavy on me as I made this decision. All right, so thanks everyone for your time today. All right, so the next item, we have a continued public hearing for the 491 Main Street special permit definitive subdivision for a two-lot subdivision with a common driveway and construction of an accessory barn larger than 1,500 square feet with impacts to the floodplain overlay district. So for the petitioner, you know what? I'm sorry. We'll give it a minute to let this break up.
We got
This next one is yes, it's the two-lot subdivision.
Did you ever show up for that meeting?
I would say well before.
No one fell down.
It's nice that you make it very good.
Foundations in there.
All right, so I think we're ready at this point. So again, we're considering a special permit definitive subdivision plan for a two-lot subdivision for a common driveway and construction of accessory barn larger than 1,500 feet with impacts in the floodplain overlay district. So for the applicant, Mr. Bingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appear here today on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Boyes. I'm joined here with Vacek Talako, who is the professional engineer from Hancock Associates, who's kind of lived with this project for quite some time. We last appeared before the board on March 13th of this year seeking its approval for a two-lot definitive subdivision plan and three special permits. One to allow a common driveway that would serve two residential dwellings, one for an accessory building greater than 1,500 square feet, and one that would permit new development activity within the floodplain overlay district. At the time of our first meeting, I really think that we fully addressed and vetted the common driveway and accessory building permit issues, as well as the plan itself and the key elements of the plan. I think that the board was concerned and decided to withhold decision with regard to that plan for those permits pending the zoning board's recommendation regarding whether or not section 4.10.4.1H of the development standards for new construction activity within the floodplain overlay district apply. That section, subparagraph H of the development bylaws, provides that the area of the floodplain district that is used to satisfy the minimum lot areas in the underlying zoning district shall not exceed 25% of the lot area. And because, if you recall, Lot 2 was a under frontage lot, the minimum lot size requirement jumped from 60,000 square feet to 180,000 square feet. It is true that greater than 25% of the floodplain district within that lot would have been used to satisfy the 180,000 square foot requirement. But it's also true, and this is the tricky part of this, is that the floodplain bylaw is intended to address new development activity within the floodplain. With respect to both lots 1 and 2, there was going to be no development activity, no proposed new development activity within either of the floodplain areas contained within those lots. When we presented the plan to the Zoning Board of Appeal, we left with the same uncertainty that we arrived with. That is, I think it's fair to say, neither we nor the Zoning Board of Appeals felt that they could say to a certainty whether we needed a variance or didn't need a variance. Based on that ambiguity, we went back to the drawing board and modified the original definitive plan that we presented to the board back on the 13th to make 2 fully conforming lots. In essence, we picked up additional frontage on Bella Way for Lot 2, so that the requirement of 180,000 square feet dropped back to 60,000 square feet. Now, the floodplain issue is not an issue at all. The only work within the floodplain district will take place within the parcel A designated on the plan, which is an unbuildable parcel. And with respect to that, really, what happens here, will fall under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission when it entertains our notice of intent. Really, I think that we're now in a situation where the board can approve the revised subdivision plan, that it can issue the permits without fear that the Zoning Board of Appeals would require any variance with respect to the floodplain district. I would also point out that I received a copy of the March 27th letter from Graham Associates indicating to the board that it has reviewed the revised plan and that it is as well of the opinion that there would be no further need for us to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I think we're now fully here within your jurisdiction and would ask for your approval of the plan as revised. And to the extent that you have any technical questions with regard to the plan, Mr. Tlaco is here to answer those. So I would simply, in closing, ask that you approve the plan subject to the waivers that have been requested and are part of the package that you have here. If you have specific questions regarding any of those waivers, I'm happy to address those. And if I can't answer them, I'm quite certain that Mr. Tlaco can.
Thank you. Anyone, any abutters here that have any questions or concerns about this project before we move on to the technical review? So, I know, Larry, you took a look at this, and I know you helped him. You're in agreement that the ZBA variance at this point isn't necessary, given that we increased the road length of Bella Way, right?
Increase in length of Bella Way such that, as the attorney stated, the lots would conform to the minimum 60,000 square foot lot area and would also conform to the required frontage and width for those lots. And as well, that section that required the no more than 25% floodplain in the underlying zoning, which is 60,000 square feet, could be met without going back to the CBA. However, the attorney also stated and asked that the board approve the plan tonight, which I think is way premature for the board to take that kind of action. I've only commented on the plan with respect to that floodplain, and as you said, I work with the representative of Oshek's firm, Hancock, to work this plan out so we could get to that point. But at this time.
Good. And
I don't think, I certainly don't think that, we would have any objection to that. Our whole intent is to develop a plan that works for the town as well as the applicant.
I'm not aware of any new review letter. Did you send us a new review letter?
Oh, no. I think the attorney is representing a very short letter that I sent with respect to...
just the ZBA.
Yeah, but we have not done the review of the definitive plan. We did of the preliminary, but not the definitive plan, and given that to the board for their consideration and moving on with approval of the subdivision.
Mr. Mento?
Yeah, just one quick question. Now that you've revised the plan, does this mean that it's now a formal subdivision approval and a formal road that the town would accept, or is this still going to remain a private way?
Still a private way.
Still a private way.
Right. It's laid out as a public way, but it would remain a private way.
And that part of it, really, I don't think has changed at all from the original plan that we submitted back on the 13th. And I know that the planning board had a site visit, and we've gone in last month.
So you're looking for a maximum of 2 lots?
Yes,
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And on one of those lots, the existing...
Correct. In the rear southeast corner is the existing dwelling. So
Right.
it's all to the rear of the property, and so the driveway extends in all the way from Route 1A to the rear of the property. And we're not changing the location of the drive. It's retaining its natural state except for Bella Way.
I think technically there are 2 existing lots. One just is not buildable because it doesn't have frontage. This is really a definitive subdivision to create a private way off which to front both lots, but it's also, really a reconfiguration of what's there, not creating any new lots. But we're rather creating 2 fully buildable lots.
We are creating 2 buildable lots fronted on a private way that's located in a parcel, or that will encompass the driveway and that will the road, and that will remain private.
My only question, I have no problem with the site planning and the lots. You're asking for an accessory building that's greater than 1,500 square feet, which could be 20,000 square feet or more. I think we need some detail on what that building might be.
I think we have previously supplied, and the plan itself provides 1,800 square feet. It's a 300 square foot addition, and we covered that in the first meeting. Because this is a private way, first of all, Mr. Morris is a collector of antique cars, and so primarily the barn will house his collection of antique automobiles and equipment used to maintain the road, plow it, repair it, tractors, trucks, those kinds of things. But
I don't have any problem with 1,800 square feet.
No, and the butter to the property butts the railway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So doesn't seem like we'd have any objections there. doesn't seem like you're making, at this point, we're gonna have Larry take a look at the plan, make some further comments and recommendations. Would it matter today if we were to, to consider the special permit for the accessory building, or do you want to just hold off on all that?
No, I don't think we're happy to have you entertain.
It's always nice to get some.
Has any consideration, because this probably looking at the impact of drainage.
Drain wall, yeah.
That's probably not to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for that reason,
I can just say to that first of all, in our application, to the attachment to the application, we stated that it's going to be 30 by 60 detached barn, 1,800 square feet. As far as the drainage goes, as you know, as we discussed, there's going to be a infiltration and detention basin right here that will deal with the pavement of Bella Way. And then these blue things, even though they look like pools, they are really infiltration system for each roof. And we discussed this with Brent, because he's going to be he's the person that reviewed this, that we are going to manage a 25-year storm from all of this. And so that we are fairly certain with our calculations that will basically provide enough infiltration and detention from these roofs to keep the drainage coming off of this site at the same level as before. Because it's basically not going to be much change. It's not going to stay wooded. There's going to be no big lawns or anything. It's just basically all that's going to change is that this driveway is going to get slightly widened, create an apron, and these two buildings, which are going to be infiltrated. So they basically, from respect of drainage, they are not even going to exist. If I look at straight lit runoff, they are not going to exist up to 25-year storm.
thanks. So, and I think for the reason that we're looking at all these things again, Mr. Graham would want to look at the stormwater calculations as well, so we might want to just hold off on that further consideration.
So, Mr. Graham, you review the stormwater calculations for the Conservation Commission as well?
I'll review it for the planning board, and they usually just piggyback on our review. I'm not engaged by the commission.
Okay.
Ma'am, I noticed that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm 481 Main Street, so on the other side of the tracks here. And we are a little concerned about the drainage off of the road and how that will affect our low-lying property down there near the train tracks when this road is paved and widened and so forth.
So,
we
were out to this site, so I'm just trying to figure out where you are relative to where this site is. You said you're on the opposite side here?
Yeah, we're at 481 on the other side of the tracks.
Okay, so you're on the same side of the road, but further south on.
Exactly.
I see.
Did they just buy that house?
We just bought it, yes. But,
I thought they train track divides, isn't that what?
There's basically the rain tracks and the ballast that holds them provides basically a dam that prevents any water to cross from here to there. The water will get either infiltrates or will slide towards its natural drainage. So I don't really expect there is going to be any impact on this property due to anything here.
We'll definitely be looking at that type of thing. At the same time, it seems like they're taking adequate steps, at least in the planning stage, to
it's
mitigate
pretty
it.
boggy now, that's why I'm telling you.
What's that?
It's fairly boggy there now.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to pick up any more water.
They're definitely aware of that aspect of it, but we'll...
Wait till mosquito season comes.
Anybody else have any comments on this site? So with that said, I think we would probably continue this matter until we get time after Mr. Graham's looked at it and have your engineer comment back to any proposals or any revisions that come out of that, and then hopefully we'll see the next meeting and see if we can move it along.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Do.
Make a motion, we continue this to our next regular meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that new house you bought, don't take that screen off that door. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Because you will not be going outside very often. I don't know about your house, but I live right there.
All right, so we're going to get through this next item relatively quickly. We just have some other business to deal with. And one thing I want to raise with the board is that the The applicant, the owner of Didex, has asked us to withdraw the warrant amendment that we were going to propose for the zoning amendment for that site. They gave us some explanation for it, basically stating that they don't want to commit to a development scheme until they have a developer on board to move forward with it. But as much as I think we would have liked to move closer to owning that building, I think we can still, I think it's realistic to think that it's going to come back. But at this point, they just asked us to.
Are we still changing the zoning down there?
No, we're not.
Yeah.
So, nothing other than notifying everyone that the matter's been withdrawn. There's not much else we can do with that at this point.
So they could have gone with some language or something like that.
Yeah.
So they would have known where the town stood on it, so. But
It seems like they had somebody very close with this proposal.
I suppose they lost the developer.
Yeah, and it's very, very late in the game. They kind of
Is it still going to be on the warrant, or you're just going to say it's been withdrawn?
Withdrawn.
What are you signing tomorrow?
We will, if the board votes to withdraw it, we
Tonight,
will take it out.
take it out. Good.
Make a motion that we withdraw that is.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Yeah.
Now we don't get too nice.
We're already getting you out of this.
Get down on midnight.
Turn it down.
Okay, so I think the last appointment we have this evening is for Mr. DeCoulis pertaining to an open space residential development proposal for the subdivision at by the Tompkins Danger Dam Trust, property located on Daniels Road, also known as Marion Way, map 9, lot 23, zoned in the outlying zoning district.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you may remember, I was here on March 13th to talk about this OXRD concept plan. My name again is Jim DeCoulos. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm here representing Bruce Tompkins and Stephanie DeJardin, as they are the trustees of the Tompkins DeJardin Trust. This is the project at the intersection of, at Daniels Road, at an S-turn in Daniels Road. Kirk, if you scroll down a little bit, I've got a USGS topo map here that shows the location. And you can see Haverhill Street 133, and then Daniels Road coming off, and there's that S-turn on Daniels Road, and this is where this project is being proposed. So what we have here is, so you can see it's before Emily Lane. You come off Haverhill Street.
Where'd you go?
You know what, Kirk, if you just fill the screen, we'll just, that'll be fine.
I was trying to zoom in. Location.
So at the March 13th hearing, the board asked me to take a look at some other projects. One in particular that Kirk had provided is the Newbury Road Estates project off of Boxford Road. We took a look at that. So does everyone have a sense of where the project is? Kirk, if you go to the next page, that's basically what I have here is this OSRD concept plan. And then the next page, Kirk. So what I've done here is taken MassGIS data, and which shows the tax parcels in the town of Raleigh, and overlaid this OSRD plan on that concept. So you get a sense for where the project is in relation to the homes along Daniels Road, Haverhill Street, Raleigh Country Club, Emily Lane, and also the remaining extent of the Tompkins DeJardin's holdings to the north. Ultimately connecting with the Falcon Ridge project that's before you as well. One of the things I wanted to point out here, if I may, is one of the discussions we had was, that the board was concerned about last time, was how this conservation land would connect. Right now, it just seems like it's open-ended conservation. And the town owns 4 acres right here that's basically landlocked. Ultimately, what we would be doing is connecting to that land in another phase. Also, we could extend this conservation land behind Emily Lane here, and then extend this connection to the 4-acre town parcel over to the Girl Scout camp, which is right here. So the Falcon Ridge project is up in this area, Raleigh Country Club, Girl Scout camp. Ultimately, in an additional phase, once we're able to cross that wetland, we would be able to assemble a conservation puzzle and pull the whole thing together. So this concept may not do it initially, but we expect that in the long term, we're going to have a nice ultimate conservation connection for the town. Next page. So one of the requirements that the board had us take a look at was preparing covenants. And there are 5 basic guidelines here that we'd like to follow for preparing covenants for this project. Again, what we're proposing to do here is this conservation land is going to be held by the homeowners association, and a restriction will be granted to the town forever saving this land in conservation in perpetuity. That's how the restriction will be created. So principle number 1 is all 7 lots are going to be part of this homeowners association. Number 2 is there'll be O&M for the common septic system, which will be down here again. We'll be doing perk tests out here next week. We know from preliminary soil tests that we've got some excellent soil there. Also, the homeowners association will be responsible for the stormwater management, the best management practices, the BMPs. They'll be responsible for maintaining that. More than likely, we're going to have some underground stormwater infiltration down in this area here, down gradient. Third issue is house designs. We want to have some traditional colonial house designs, and that's in the package too. What we ended up doing was meeting with Martha McInnes. Here's one of Martha's designs. These are traditional designs. She did a lot of the design work for Bob Lenahan and some of the other well-known builders in the area. Martha's out of Bradford. Keep going, Kirk. I'll show you some of the other designs. There's some floor plans in there. This is a traditional colonial here. But these are the types of homes we're looking to have in this project. Just traditional colonial homes. And at the end of your package, too, there's some color schemes from Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore. They have historic color collections. We want to make sure that the houses are following those traditional historic colors that are typically allowed by the National Register of Historic Places. Fourth concept is landscaping. We want to make sure that all the landscaping is native-based, that there are no invasive species introduced for the landscaping, and we want to make sure that all site improvements are going to be approved by either the owners, Bruce Tompkins and Stephanie DeJardin, or a design team that we're considering assembling. That would probably include an architect, a landscape architect, an engineer, and the owner. And the fifth principle or guideline is that once the owners are conveyed these individual lots, because again, we're interested in creating a definitive subdivision in conjunction with the special permit we're going to be seeking. Once these homeowners are conveyed these individual lots, we'd like to make sure that they don't do anything crazy afterwards. So we want to make sure that any site alterations are controlled by either the association or the design team. I think that's about it. Again, going back to that Kirk, if you could go back to that Mass GIS plan, I think that really is sort of like where we left things off. And just scroll up, Kirk, and get a picture here as to where we are. Again, so, you know, I really think, well, for instance, this is the 4-acre parcel owned by the town. It's in the upper left-hand corner here. So, you know, ultimately what we can do once we cross this wetlands on another phase is connect to that 4-acre town-owned property and possibly head due east to the Girl Scout camp and make a nice connection for conservation that assembles all the conservation lands together in one nice unified piece. Would like to file for the May 8th hearing, and I was wondering what the deadline would be for that. And if the board thinks we're premature with this, if there are any other questions, I'd like to address them now, but that's our goal right now, is to have a special permit in your hands to be heard at the May 8th hearing.
I mean, I think, appreciate you coming in again with the follow-up on your informal, because I think this is going to help us move, you know, the petition through the system a little more quickly. As a result, every comment that we made, you can more or less address. One thing I know that the open space, particularly early on, or at least initially, is sort of landlocked, not necessarily connected to anything that otherwise is being utilized as open space. But nonetheless, it's always been an objective of ours to try to create access to whatever public space we're creating. So I do think if you can find a way to just incorporate into whatever your layout is, at least some trailhead marker, or at least, you know, access to public space, and you know, we do want to see that. Are you anticipating any signage for the project, or is it because of the nature of it, you're just not going to create any kind of unique identity for it? Or?
Well, we will have a name for the project. Bruce has suggested Danielsville. I don't know how the board feels about that. I mean,
It doesn't sound very good.
It was referred to that area historically, but it is a little awkward, and especially where you've got Daniels Road, it could get confusing.
I like it, but
the wagon wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there could be something. The wagon wheel factory is right there. And I've been looking at natural vegetation and endangered species in the area, or something to sort of tie the project in, but haven't quite found anything yet. But we'll come back with a name, I assure you.
Sure.
But again, we're shooting for the May 8th hearing. But just to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, we're not anticipating any signs. This is just going to be a small 7-lot project right now. We don't expect this to be a big welcome to you.
This is an OSRD.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how this is an OSRD. What's the benefit to the town here?
The benefit is that the town gets land held in conservation permanently. That total area is over 12 acres.
It's conservation anyways. You can't build it, right?
Well, that's what I was about to get to next. Is just the ratio of upland to wetland in the conservation in the conservation restricted area. Mm-hmm. How much of that is wetland compared to upland?
You did ask me that last time, and I didn't get the answer on that. My apologies. But we do have, what we're creating here for conservation land is greater than what the bylaw requirements are. Now, what we're doing, similar to what Falcon Ridge did, is we're adding a lot more conservation land.
Okay.
The requirement is 50% of the project is to be open space or conservation, and right now we're at 69%. So I mean, we can take out some of this wetlands that's unbuildable and forever conserved, but we'll still be over 50%.
What was your yield plan? 6 lots?
Yes. Yep. So this is our yield plan, and this will be submitted with the package, and it was 6 lots. And so we're seeking a 17% density bonus by adding the 7th lot. So these are 3 of the large reduced frontage lots that extend back into this area here. These would be allowed by right under the zoning bylaws.
So, David raised the point, what's the benefit coming out of this OSRD, and I realize you got the space. As far as the density bonus, usually, there's usually something over and above what the OSRD ordinance would require to justify, or in consideration for the bonus, I guess. Is there anything that, we should consider?
What's the basis for the bonus? I'd like to know.
Well, that's what we're asking.
Yeah, we're providing over 12 acres of open space conservation land, which is 69% of the overall project. That amount of land area is what we believe is the basis for the...
Well, that's not a basis under our bylaw. There are 2 ways to get a density bonus under the OSRD bylaw. One is providing affordable housing, and the second is building townhouse-style condominiums. So you're talking about single-family homes, so you don't get a density bonus just for adding open space. It's just not.
That's not what the bylaw says. Section 6.4.7.2 talks about the public improvements that you're allowed up to 20% for public improvements or amenities that result in substantial benefit to the town. Well, townhouse dwellings, maximum of 2 bedrooms per unit, and then affordable housing. So there's 3.
It's just what you said.
I mean, I think it'd be a heavy burden showing that he's providing a public amenity that justifies the density bonus. I mean, he's just providing a little more open space.
Exactly.
Does not really do it.
I mean, it's better than 40B, but it looks like a standard little subdivision. Yeah.
So what if we provided a connection to the 4-acre town parcel? Would you consider that a substantial public improvement or amenity?
I think that was in the pipeline anyways. That would be us considering the open space in the first place, would be connecting to something beneficial for the town.
So the town has no access to that parcel right now. There's no benefit to the 4 acres that town holds.
What about, it's informal, we're here to discuss ideas. One of the issues with that whole area is that turn. So, is there any capacity for this applicant to find a way to make that turn a little less difficult to navigate? Because that's where, we talk about Weathersfield, we talk about that hair turn, and the setting was spoken about turn and rally, I would say. I mean, I think that there's potentially something to be gained from making that a safe intersection.
We will do that. Well, I see the possible improvements on the interior of this curve. I mean, there's no problem with coming in and out of this curve. I mean, you've got sight lines going to the south and to the west. The problem here is that cars are possibly traveling too fast around this curve, not to see oncoming traffic around the curve.
I think you're right. It's not that the sight lines within the curve aren't too bad, and it's just that. It's just that you enter that at too high rate of speed. You approach that intersection more quickly than, and I don't know how engineering could change it other than the signage.
Well, no, there's a way to improve it with the sight lines. I mean, we could reduce the topography. We could seek an easement possibly from that property owner. But I mean, we don't have rights to that property. But that would be the way to improve those sight lines. Would be to reduce the topography there so you can see inside of that curve. But people travel too fast around the curve. There's no question about it. That's the danger. It's not this project. It's the speed at which people are traveling under current conditions.
And the only reason I brought that up because I know that this corner has been looked at, or this stretch of roadway. But as far as the density bonus, it is pretty specific in the bylaw that the applicant's got to bring something beyond what the ordinance otherwise requires for the approval to justify that up to 20% bonus.
So the board doesn't consider us providing access to the landlocked 4-acre parcel as a significant public improvement or amenity to the town?
I mean, that was kind of implied with your initial plan here, so I don't think so. That's just
How is that implied? I don't understand that. So if we provide a traditional subdivision, how is it implied that the town has a right to get to that 4-acre parcel?
Well, I don't think it's, well, I'm not sure if it's necessary that it was to be implied or not. I mean, I'm not sure that, I mean, it's a parcel of land that I don't think anyone in town is even aware it was on the town's tax roll, not necessarily something, an asset that they're going to be seeking to access, and as a result, we could say, well, we've opened this up for you. And I'm not trying to diminish what you're trying to do here. I do want to try to find a way to get you where you need to be, but we would definitely need something beyond, you know, the square footage that the OSRD would otherwise mandate.
Does the town have a need for additional park space, recreation space? Soccer fields, being jammed too much?
I think you're absolutely, you know, talking about things that are in the realm of what we can use for that as discretion to justify a density bonus, but I always feel like the board is in a tough spot to say what the town needs. We're only here to say what, you know, how to apply the planning, the zoning ordinance. I would like to consult, I think we should consult with other departments within the town.
Is there a recreation department?
Yeah.
Recreation, conservation.
You know,
I mean, it's the 4 acres is relatively flat, and it could be a really nice spot for a ball, for a soccer field, or some recreational park space for the town.
Well, that's, you know, definitely, that's, so what you're saying is if you can provide access to it, the land is there.
Yes.
And, you know, depending on what type of access you can provide, it could be useful.
Yeah.
Parking would be an issue with something like that, though.
Well, with 4 acres, perhaps, you know, they can find it useful. But again, I don't think, I'd like, usually something like that, the departments come to the board saying, listen, this is important to us, so, you know, we would, you know.
So it sounds like what I need to do is to reach out to the recreation committee, or, you know, who's in charge of recreational use in town, and see if there's a need for additional parks or passive recreational space.
Can I make a comment? I mean, if you were talking about actually doing the site work to build the ball fields, that would be a public amenity. But if you're just providing access to raw land and you're not proposing to do the work, I mean, I don't see how that's an amenity.
Okay. Well, I mean, that for us is an economic analysis, because we could always just fall back and just get our 6-lot subdivision.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to look at that and see if the numbers make sense, but we'd be willing to consider it if they do. The concern, though, is that in order to get to the 4-acre town parcel, we would have to cross this wetland. And ultimately, we want to do that, but it would involve us, you know, having to construct a new crossing, which would be a pretty significant undertaking with the Conservation Commission. Not that it can't be done, but I mean, it's still something that we were planning for an additional phase.
Right. Which, because it's something that you'd probably be considering, because of the economics of it, you wouldn't really be considering until you had that phase on the drawing board. It'd be hard to barter any kind of additional amenity in the future for what you're seeking today.
Yeah, it certainly would exceed the cost of one additional lot, so it may just not be worth it.
How much land do you have beyond the conservation land?
Beyond here?
Yeah, how much?
About 120 acres, 125 acres.
Is that going to be an OSRD?
We don't know yet. I mean, right now, we're just trying to guess.
Too many ifs here.
Well, I mean, all we can deal with right now is what's before this wetland. We're trying to minimize the impact on the wetland resource right now and just see what we can do to get a project in here. If we want to propose crossing the wetland, then, you know, we could possibly talk 40 or 50 lots, but right now we're just not prepared to do that.
I just think there's a more imaginative way for people to live, 7 people to live, than what is the scale down with one additional lot subdivision.
So you're suggesting that this might be a better alternative, just to go with the 6-lot traditional subdivision?
It's not good for you because you want the access to.
Well, we can still get the access. I mean, we'll make it happen, but, you know, we just think it's a better concept for the town to propose the OSRD. You know, and if...
But we're not seeing too much of the OSRD benefit.
The conservation land, and we could provide...
To me, it's conservation land whether you designate it or not, because you can't build on it.
We could, there's land up in here that we can build on. There's other land down in here we can build on. I mean, it's not all wetland. It's not all within 25 foot of the buffer zone. I mean, if we just take out the wetlands, we're still over 50%.
Well, you know, the barrier at this point is that density bonus. And I think, you know, we'd rather see an OSRD for all the reasons that it's in the bylaw. We just need to be able to, you know, if we were to grant a density bonus, we just need to make sure that we were
justified.
You know, justified within the ordinance when if we do grant that bonus that we had.
You mentioned the sharpness of the curve. We made a study on the width of Daniels Road, and at that sharp curve, the width of Daniels Road has been reduced. And what we want to do is widen it and reduce the topography on the hill.
Berm across the street.
Yes,
yeah.
across the street.
So so if we're looking at, you know, public benefits here for this density bonus that we're seeking, okay, improvement of the curve would be one.
Excuse me, no, it wouldn't, because I believe the language of the bylaw references a public amenity that's not necessary to mitigate the negative aspects of the development, so that's really not what's contemplated.
Okay, so this is what the bylaw says.
Actually, but to speak to that point, and again, I'm not sure, we could approve this OSRD and do nothing with that berm. But we could also ask the developer to commit resources to improve that condition. That would, you know, if it's something beyond what they'd otherwise have to do, that would seem to me like that brings an amenity to the offer. And just because, I mean, because if they don't have to deal with the roadway and could nonetheless put this in, if they're willing to do something to improve it, then I think we have to at least consider that as something value added.
Maybe if they came up with something really substantial that really made a real improvement, you know, maybe. You know, we went through this with the country club. There were, as I recall, Larry, you may recall that, there were a couple traffic studies done, at least one anyway, on ways to improve that intersection. And Larry, do you recall what the
well, actually, I think it goes all the way back to Emily Lane. When Emily Lane was developed, I think there was an attempt at least to get some easement in that curve from the abutter on the other side of the road, and I don't think that went through. When the country club came through the traffic studies and all, there was some siding and paint lining that was approved and got done. Yeah, I think all the way from 133 through the two curves and perhaps at the Daniels Road intersection with Dodge Road.
Mm-hmm. Didn't we clean up the brush around the stone walls and everything too, so that the vision lines were better?
But I mean,
on the project,
and all the reason I brought that up is, again, you know, I can't tell you what you can bring to as inducement, but those are some areas that I know that the town would potentially consider. You know, there are other things as well, including, you know, recreational fields, access to recreational fields, recreational equipment. You know, anything you're willing to have us consider.
A fully stocked fishing pond.
And, you know, dealing with the ordinance as it's written.
Okay. So one of the things we could do is, we could say, we're not providing any public benefit, we just want our 6 lots, right, instead of 7, right? That's an option for us, right?
That's an option.
Okay. So I mean, we could just take one of these houses off and just, you know, come back with a plan like this, right? That's one option.
Right, and that obviously would not require a donation or conservation restriction.
Right, so we would just hold this land. Well, no, that would still, the OSRD would
It's
still
still
require.
OSRD.
Yeah, still an OSRD.
You just don't.
Right. Okay, and then another option, this probably is the first option, is just traditional subdivision, right?
Right.
Okay. So that's option 1. Option 2 is we go with just 6 lots rather than 7, right?
Right.
No public benefit. And then the third option
Beyond
is
the OSRD.
beyond the OSRD, allowing us to get a density bonus.
Yeah.
And the third option would be to come up with some negotiated bonus that the town would feel as though is justified to allow the 7th lot, right?
Right. And, you know, I don't know that there's any financial analysis as to what you give us compared to what you get. You know, that's really not how I read the ordinance to mean, but it does have to have bring something that would allow us to, you know, confer that bonus.
Benefit, yeah. Okay, and so you don't believe, or, I'm sorry, is it Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Is it, and I know you can't speak on behalf of the board, but would access to that, I mean, is it possible that just a boardwalk with access to the 4-acre parcel might be enough if we provided maybe a parking area down here for people then to walk to the field? Is that something that might be, rather than doing a full-blown?
You know,
That would still have to go before the conservation.
Yeah, no
The
question.
wetlands.
No question.
and again, not to, I think, you know, I want to hear these ideas, but this board on its own, I don't think could make the determination that is of what justify, you know, what's a valuable amenity for the
Is
town
it worth
to
it?
see. You know,
I think parking spots on normal OSRD,
Yeah, I
stuff
mean,
like that, that's all
It's all part of the open space, and you're supposed to provide public access.
Above and beyond what we
Yeah,
normally.
that's not, yeah, I agree, so that would not be a
That's
problem.
just something we would expect anyways.
Right.
I know we have on other
Okay,
projects.
but, you know, a parking spot that says enjoy these public trails, that's certainly something we expect with an OSRD. We don't necessarily ask somebody to put a boardwalk across a wetlands crossing to lead to public, you know, to traverse to public land. So, I mean, it depends on, I suppose, the scope of what you're proposing. And again, I don't think we can say that it's part of the OSRD if we've never required it, and it's not part of the covenant to say that we would, you know, require it for an approval.
You have to think of the OSRD as being substantially better than the 6-lot subdivision. And that's,
I'm having a hard time justifying that right now.
well, you understand,
what's wrong with us just...
Jim, you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, we just thought it was a better concept plan for the town, you know? Yeah.
I mean, I think that
Poco, a little bit better, but not OSRD better.
That would need a nice roadway around that.
well, I mean, I think that you know, if you can do it, you can't. But down the road, if another OSRD came along, we aggregated some additional conservation land, then you start to see the benefit of using these OSRDs versus traditional subdivisions, where we wouldn't gain that conservation restriction or public land. But we're only looking at this 7-lot, 12-acre parcel, so I think we have to view it within that vacuum.
Okay. Yeah, total area of this project is 18 acres.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, you got 7 lots, and I keep hearing 7 lots. If you thought of it as just 1 lot and 7 buildings on it?
I don't understand where you're at.
6 lots, actually.
Well, I mean, you don't need lot lines.
No, we do. We're proposing to file a definitive subdivision with the special permit application, and we want to convey these lots in fee simple to the property owners.
I mean, I'll look at it was a condominium option, but I understand.
Yeah, that's what Newbury Road Estates did. They did
Right.
condominium, right?
Right.
We would prefer not to. We prefer just, and for that matter, Raleigh Country Club, right? I mean, we'd prefer just to convey these in fee simple and grant the conservation restrictions to the town, but we'll have to take a look at this now. So,
maybe you should be looking at the whole parcel in a conceptual way.
well, we did meet with Kirk and Brent, fire department, DPW.
How many acres you got total? 100 and...
It's a 152 acre parcel. Falcon Ridge has got 10 acres, so it's 140 acres total. But yeah, I mean, that's...
Because is your access point to those acres going to be through these 7 lots?
It's one potential access, yeah. Another potential access is Emily Lane. And that's why, wanted to get this big picture up, just so you can get a sense of the bigger scheme of things. Kirk, if you could sort of, if you don't mind dragging that up a little bit, just so that... Yeah, so Falcon Ridge is up here, and Emily Lane is right here. And so there's one access point here at Emily Lane to come in. There's this access point here off of Daniels Road. So, we could do a loop like this, and there'd be 2 wetland crossings, one here, and then a second one over here, which we're dealing with right now with the Conservation Commission. But ultimately, there's a connection there to the Falcon Ridge project.
Yes.
And, I agree, it is worth looking at the big picture, and that's why we had that meeting with Kurt and Brent, to try to talk with the fire department and public works and just get a sense for the infrastructure demands and what the conservation benefit would be in the scheme of things.
Maybe there is a conservation benefit if you look at it in a whole, or in a recreational benefit in a whole with all this potential.
Yeah, there's no question. When you look at that big picture, that it does all come together. We just can't do it right now. This is just the first part of the puzzle, and once that wetland crossing takes place, then we're into assembling the big picture. And I thought that this would be a good start to do that, but I guess we're going to have to just reevaluate that.
I mean, I don't want to dissuade you. I mean, the 6 lot OSRD has all the elements that we need. The 7 lot is what you're looking for. We're just looking for that benefit, that would,
Which could be affordable housing too.
Right. That's one of the things we could do is take advantage of that provision in the bylaw for the affordable housing.
Now, I mean, given what you're proposing, though, it would be tricky to get one affordable unit in there.
To get the 15%.
To get to 50, to get that 15%, and then, I can't imagine that would necessarily be viable from your business plan.
Yeah, we would have to take a look at those numbers, but okay. I mean, I think I get a sense of the board, what you're looking for. I mean, it seems to me like there's just not enough public improvement or amenity here that provides substantial benefit to the town, as the bylaw says. So it's the board's position, unless we put a wetland crossing in here and build a park for the town, build a soccer field, and make a conservation connection to the Girl Scout camp. It's probably not worth trying to get some additional density bonus at this point. Is that fair to say?
Well, it depends on the future what the master plan
Yeah, but you didn't talk about this right
is, because maybe
So what you're suggesting is that if we came in with a master plan for the whole project, showing the connection to Falcon Ridge, that it might be worth talking about a density bonus at that point?
But you're not guaranteeing that that rest of that project's gonna be done, right?
No, we would come in with that being done, I mean, with the whole project being done.
it may give you the flexibility of different kinds of places where people can live. I mean, there's no difference between these 6 house lots and what we were doing in 1960. And
1960, the
maybe 59 or 72, but, you know.
Okay.
You know, I want, you know, I know where you want to go, you want the 7 lots. I think that potentially, if you can demonstrate through aggregating a couple different amenities, that maybe that would be the basis. I can't say for sure, but I mean, I also, but I mean, as far as a master plan of what you could do, how you can develop the remainder of the land, I think that would be hard for you, because you'd be committing to, I mean, we couldn't accept it without some agreement that this is going to, you know, this is what you're locked into. And yet, 120 acres, you know, over potentially a couple of decades, are you ready to have us look at all that right now? Just to get to the point where we give you the...
one extra lot.
One extra lot. I mean, I'm not... So,
No. That's the reality.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is an important landowner that has a lot of, could present a lot of different opportunities for the town. I don't want to discourage him. I think that we're not going to, you know, be open to what proposals might come down the road, but, you know, we're also confined by what we have.
Yep, understood.
So,
okay.
So,
unless there's some flash of lightning that allows us to figure
Well,
out...
that gets into my favorite word, of course, imagination.
All right, so we'll put our creativity caps on and see what we can do to provide a substantial benefit to the town. And if we can't come up with a creative benefit...
Who owns the farm right next to it? The farm that's right before the bend there.
Oh, Herrick.
Is that Herrick's farm?
That's it.
Maybe you can get him to clean that up. That would be a big town.
I think I heard it's for sale, actually.
Does Herrick have more than one farm?
Well, I mean, he might.
All right, so if we come back, stay with the 6 lot OSRD for the May 8th hearing, what's the deadline for submittal, Kirk?
You're trying to get it on the May... You're trying to look at the May 8th?
Yeah. That would be the next hearing, right? Or after...
Well...
Yeah, your next hearing is what, the 10th?
You May 10th?
That's what you said, the continuance for May 10th.
May 8th is the...
Friday.
Okay.
That's the second Wednesday, right?
Yeah, the second Wednesday.
So what would you like to see everything in by, Kirk, as far as in your lap?
If you're talking about doing a full submittal, right?
Yeah, full submittal, special permit for a 6 lot OSRD.
Okay. Really, I would need to advertise, I would need everything by the end of day 15, on Monday the 15th, in order to get an ad in.
This coming Monday the 15th?
Yeah, next Monday, but that's a holiday, so it would have to really be by Monday the 16th. I would have to get the ad written.
All right, that's not happening.
Yeah, submit it to the newspaper.
So are you planning on having a second hearing in May?
Yeah, there's actually a second May meeting. Yeah, which would be 21st, actually. Because
21st.
Tuesday.
And what would be the deadline for submittal on that?
So for that, we'd have to advertise on the 7th and the 14th. So Tuesday, the 30th, I would have to submit an ad to the newspaper. So really, the Friday before that, I would need to have a submittal.
Okay.
And then I can put the ad together. And
Got it. Okay. So unless we come up with a flash of imagination, I think what we're going to be doing is probably proposing a 6-lot OSRD, and then get this permitted, and then come back and start looking at big picture stuff once we've got this in, and we can start pulling everything together over the next decade. All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so Kirk, you got any updates or?
sort of signs.
So we got a site visit on the 18th, next meeting on the 23rd, and then what's the first May meeting? May 10th?
That's the 8th. May 8th.
Site visit the 18th at 4:30. And that was for Brad Jameson's down on the warehouse. Just walk over to that. Yes. How's it going? It's interesting. I was really hoping it was going to be like a landslide, one direction, the other one. I was very much interested about it. I had to make sure I heard it right. Kevin,
I tried to sneak into it. Tried to sneak in.
Should build them up this year. This is too many.
What, we closed the second? What? We closed
Signing. This one only has one. It'll sell them all.
No minutes today, right? We're all caught up with minutes?
Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
We have, Donna has been keeping up with them, so technically they're ready. It's just a matter of.
So let's just sign them. I get it.
I'll tell you what, see if we can kick out as many as you can for next meeting, which is on the 23rd. And hopefully as long as we see them before the meeting, we can at least take a vote on whether to approve.
Have to send them out again.
I've got it. It's like
The end of April.
So we'll see one more time.
Maybe you send to them to read.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when it's retiring.
Retiring?
Well, she's gonna work
As long
with
as I get
someone.
this.
Working for your husband, right?
That does not sound like retirement.
6:23, what is that? She hasn't even had a meeting. Notified her today. You can see the solar farm.
I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Good evening. Let's all